Okay, hello. Today we'll talk about this important German architect, Gottfried Böhm, born in 1920, and let's read a little bit about him. So Gottfried Böhm was born on the 23rd of January 1920, but he died on the 9th of June, and today is the 9th of June 2021. So actually he died exactly 2 years ago. Was a German architect and sculptor. His reputation is based on creating highly sculptural buildings made of concrete, steel, and glass. Böhm's first independent building was the Cologne Chapel, Madonna in the Rubble. Interesting name, and that building is also associated with Peter Zumthor. I read, now integrated into Peter Zumthor's design of the Columba Museum renovation. The chapel was completed in 1949, where a medieval church once stood before it was destroyed during World War II. Böhm's most influential and recognized building is the Maria Königin des Friedens Pilgrimage Church in, I'm almost sure I don't pronounce well this name, Nebigis, I don't know German, which is sad, but it's not the only thing I don't know. In 1986, he became the first German architect to be awarded the prestigious Pritzker Prize. Among the most recently completed construction projects involving Gottfried Böhm are the Hans Otto Theater in Potsdam and the Cologne Central Mosque, completed in 2018. So let's see some of his works, but before, let's look at the man. I like very much his sweater, and I like his seriousness. And it seems God liked him too, because gave him 101 years of living on this earth. Here he is with his siblings, with his brothers. He's the second one from the left. And, you know, it's amazing. It looks like, you know, they are all, you know, advanced in age. Anyway, so this was Gottfried Böhm. After he received the Pritzker Prize, but he probably was smiling even before, although the first picture we saw showed him, and this is a picture as a young man, and in my opinion, he was a handsome man, and an interesting artist and architect. Some drawings by Gottfried Böhm. This is the church that he built, all concrete. I mean, it's a tour de force in concrete, and he has very nice pencil drawings, you know, section, and here he is drawing something which was not built, but you know, it's still an interesting picture. The architect still drawing with a pencil or with a, you know, a pen with a lead. I like the fact that he was inspired by the Gothic, because usually modernism was not very fond of the Gothic, but him, and even more his father, because he came from, he was born from, you know, in a family with a lot of architectural activity, and Dominicus Böhm, his father, was a famous expressionist architect who built many churches. So I suggest to you, if you are interested, to check him out. So it's not just Gottfried Böhm, but also Dominicus Böhm, his father, who was truly a great expressionist architect who built mostly churches. This is the plan, but we are going to see that this work in detail a little bit later. Now, this is the first important work he did, which is also connected with Peter Zumthor. As I said, 1947, 1950, St. Columba in Cologne or Köln in Germany, where there was a Gothic church that was destroyed in the Second World War. In the back here, in the background, we see the spires of the famous Cologne or Köln cathedral. But this one in the foreground is what remained, as you can see, after the deadly bombings. I should have had more pictures, but I don't. 1962, 1969, the Bensberg City Hall, another opus in concrete. But we are going to see it a little more in detail. Here you see the City Hall is the work in the foreground, all concrete, and we see the flash, which is itself some kind of an homage to the medieval silhouettes, not to say medieval architecture. And we see here the way he integrated or tried to integrate the old with the new. Although in my opinion, in this work, the new is still a little bit rigid and predictable, and even, if you want, a little bit commercial. But it's an office building. It's the City Hall with its bureaucratic spaces, the offices. The most impressive part is the tower, I would say. But he was also a sculptor, and you can see that here. But I think the rest of the building on the right is a little bit cold, in my opinion. And not because of the material he used, meaning concrete. What is this? A housing estate from 1965. An interesting housing complex. A lot of color. So the chromatic aspect is seductive. And, he does this embroidered metallic treatment of the balconies, which are very playful and in my opinion, very, very pleasant. Yes, also, yes, concrete a lot here as well. But even where there is concrete, he sometimes uses color, like you see here. And I think it's done very imaginatively, and color and the variety of volumes, the sculpturalness of the building makes a more humane, sensitive building, even if it's in concrete. So, housing complex, he built another one, and we are going to see that one as well. Even if he had, a robust, one could almost say a brutalist kind of aesthetics, he indulged also in Baroque, interventions, like here. This sinuousness is rather Baroque in spirit. Interesting architect, and also you see, unafraid to oppose green to red, which are opposite colors in the wheel of colors. Access to the apartments from an exterior corridor. Plants climbing on the building. Or painted, like you see now. I don't know if he did this artistic intervention here, to, maybe he did, or maybe someone else did it later. But all in all, it's a building that is not the usual block of flats. Exterior corridors that connect the two sides of the complex. So the sculpturalness of the building is a positive thing, and I would say that it might be that architecture is not an inhabited sculpture, as Constantin Brâncu said, but sculpturalness does help architecture. And this is from the 1960s. So, you know, more than half a century ago. Gottfried Bohm. Now we look at this Catholic church work, a little bit less known. It's not his most famous building, but it's still architecture, and he has a very interesting glass work. But the roof is interesting as well. And you look at the glass work, if we can call it so. It's not really. It's almost no glass, but it's a very sculptural and plastically inciting treatment of the openings where one would expect to be just glass. Very appropriate for a church, and maybe not only for a church. I wish I had more pictures with this work because I think it deserves attention. I have to improve on the presentation. As I said, it's not a very long presentation. Now, Iglesia Youth Center Library in Cologne, it's a library for a church. And he works with the concrete and brick quite well. I think some some plants would have helped even further, you know, the buildings if plants were allowed to attack the walls. But that could still happen. Gottfried Bohm, a massive, you know, sculptural architecture with these walls, almost like fortress walls. You can tell that he was attempting the medieval, as I call it, the medievalization of modernism. Now, this is his well-known, his best-known work, Maria Königin des Friedens in God. I can read it. This is the work. It's a very important work that he did, very sculptural. I understood that the concrete in time needed some work. It became affected by the elements. But this, you know, abstract mountain of concrete is, I think, metaphorically at least, referring to, you know, to nature, although it is an abstracted nature. It's, you know, almost a concrete iceberg. So let's read a little about it because it has an interesting history. Standing like a concrete mountain amid the wood, the jagged concrete volume of the Neviges Mariendom Cathedral of St. Mary of this place towers over its surroundings. Built on a popular pilgrimage site in Western Germany, the Mariendom is only the latest iteration of a monastery that has drawn countless visitors and pilgrims from across the world for centuries. Unlike its medieval and Baroque predecessors, however, the unabashedly modernist Mariendom reflects a significant shift in the outlook of its creators, a new way of thinking for both the people of post-war Germany and the wider Catholic Church. And it's very interesting that almost a blind man advocated this project in the competition that took place. I'll read about it. Pilgrims have been making their way to this town since the late 18th century, with the church of the time first played host to an Immaculata, a venerated copper engraving depicting the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary. The site's popularity proved too great for the existing Baroque monastery, leading to the construction of an annex structure in the early 20th century. Even with this purpose-built structure, a spike in pilgrimage following the Second World War again saw the church in this town significantly over its modest capacity. In 1960, it was decided that a new pilgrimage church would be built to cope with the influx of visitors. So this is the building. I was hoping there is a more ample text. I probably have some more text later. So this is the building. You will see the hill or the mountain on the left. We see the mountainous concrete church, and we see the houses of this town. Let's read more. With this goal in mind, the Archbishopric of Cologne organized an architectural competition to take place between 1963 and 1964, 60 years ago. The contest called for a church building with seats for 900 worshippers, with standing room for 3,000 more. Other required elements included 2 chapels, a confessional church, a sacristy, a bell tower, and other ancillary spaces. The winner, chosen by both the jury and particularly by Köln's Archbishop Joseph Frings, who was almost blind at the time, was a German architect named GOTTFRIED BOHM. I love this, that an almost blind archbishop advocated this modern architecture. Bravo to him. Well, we know this from Greek mythology, that the seer who saw the truth behind the Trojan War was actually blind, Tiresias. So the blind actually sees more and better than the ones who have no problem seeing. Interesting, no? And also in the movie, how is it called, by Fritz Lang, a great expressionist movie, the CTM, something like this, searching for its murderer. Also, the one who discovers the murderer is a blind man. On all the others who were not blind couldn't do it, but the blind man does. In this case, the Archbishop Joseph Frings, who was almost blind at the time, he chose, and being in the position of being Köln's Archbishop, he was very influential. So he succeeded. Very, very nice. Maybe we need more blind people in the world. This was the man, the Archbishop Frings. He has glasses here, certainly with some reason. I read very nice things about this gentleman. He was also an adversary of Nazism, and because he was a prestigious church figure, he was, not killed by the Nazis, but he advocated, look here, his episcopal motto was pro hominibus constitutus, which in Latin means appointed for the people, appointed not by the people, but for the people, or both, appointed by the people for the people. Not bad. Or maybe we should have also professors like this, appointed by the students for the students. That's what we need. Not professors appointed by professors for the professors. We need professors appointed by the students for the students. And this is the church inside. Not bad. So let's continue to read a little bit about it. In keeping with Gottfried Böhm's particular style, the otherwise featureless gray expanses of concrete are punctuated with windows of brilliantly colored stained glass. Primarily red, blue, and green, the windows, designed by Böhm himself, depict in abstract a number of typical Marian themes, including a large red rose. For the Marienkapelle, Böhm also created an elaborate composition centered around the ictus, the symbolic fish which represents Christ. Scattered throughout the church are sculptural works by other artists, including a marble column and altar designed by Elmar Hillebrand. Gottfried Böhm's own son, Marcus, was also responsible for the painting of the lower church. This was a family, and maybe still is, of architects. You know, everybody, dad was involved in that family with art and architecture. So this is the red rose where Gottfried Böhm also, expressed himself. And I can only salute this, creative way of acting in the field of what we call sacred architecture. Bravo to him and to his collaborators. Despite being situated in a small, relatively remote community, the Mariendom is monumental in scale. Böhm was a noted German expressionist, and Dominikus Böhm, who felt that sacred architecture, contemporary or otherwise, should elicit emotion in the viewer, whether approaching by rail, road, or maybe the reference is to Gottfried Böhm, but the German expressionist architect was actually his father, Dominikus Böhm. Anyway, there are some expressionist elements to an extent, even in Gottfried Böhm's work, to an extent, not very high perhaps. Anyway, so should elicit emotion in the viewer, and yes, we need an architecture that does just that, elicit emotion in the viewer and user. Whether approaching by rail, road, or on foot, one can see a mountain-like peak of concrete from afar off. The path up to the church is lined on one side by a wall and by the offices and convent on the other, forming a sense of formal procession as pilgrims make the final leg of the journey. And here it is. And this made me think a little bit, going by train towards Chartres from Paris and seeing from afar from the train the spires of the great Cathedral of Chartres. Is a very moving experience. So I suggest to you, if you go to France, if you go to Paris, please try to take the train to Chartres. It's just 1 hour away, and you will see the great Cathedral of Chartres, maybe the most sublime Gothic cathedral from afar. It's very, very beautiful. And also there are pilgrimages taking place with people walking, maybe all the way from Paris to Chartres. Very moving. Here we see these lower buildings, pointing in the direction of the Mariendom, the church that Gottfried Böhm built. So once constructed and consecrated in 1968, the Mariendom became the second largest church in Germany, outdone only by the Gothic cathedral in Köln itself. The concrete mass of the building, while giving the impression that it was impregnable, actually began to leak by the 1980s. At the time of construction, concrete's natural tendency to crack had evidently not been taken into account. Concrete patchwork done during the 1980s elicited criticism, as the patches, being of a different shade than the original material, were seen as ruining the building's aesthetic purity. Under the supervision of the architect's son, Peter Böhm, however, a second effort to patch the concrete is expected to resolve the issue while maintaining the original outward appearance of the church for both pilgrims and architectural enthusiasts alike. So look at the ceiling here. It's incredible. It's incredible because it's not it's allowed to escape determinism or you know the will or the willfulness of the architect, and it's an almost like an abstract work which welcomes even chaos, and I would say that for that itself we should appreciate this building. Mysterious windows, darkness, light. Yes, a lot of concrete. But look at this. It's like a medieval fortress. It's yet very modern, and yet somehow also old. In the front, you know, is the image of domesticity, the house, and then in the back, the austerity, the sculptural austerity of the house of God. Now, another kirche, another church in Saarbrücken, a very different kind of work. This one actually kind of inspired or similar to the churches built by Dominicus Bohm, his father. At first, I thought was actually by his father, and I am still somehow tempted to think that maybe I placed it wrongly here, that this cannot be the church built by Gottfried Bohm, but by Dominicus Bohm. I have to double check, because looking at it again, I am beginning to have some doubts that it's actually by Gottfried Bohm. Or maybe it was built by his father and he did some additional work here. I have to double check. This looks more like a building by Dominicus Bohm, actually. I could be wrong. I have to double check. But I have the highest respect for Dominicus Bohm as well, because I like expressionist architecture, and Dominicus Bohm built some remarkable churches. Now, what is this? Another kirche, another church. Was it built? These are just the renderings. Yes, it was built, and it's impressive as well. If concrete didn't pollute, it would have been even greater, but we know now that it does. Maybe, I'm most surely at that time architects didn't care about pollution, but today we have to be careful. But the interior is impressive. I only hope it's not as cold inside like in Saint-Pierre de Firminy-Vert by Le Corbusier, where I was freezing in January in 2018. I think it was 2018, yes. As opposed to the other church that we looked at, here he had to accommodate the connection with the old church, with the old building. Now, a library in Ulm, also in Germany, pyramid-like. I guess MVRDB inspired themselves when they created a library also pyramidal like this one. This one is in Ulm, an interesting town in Germany, where there was also, maybe still is, a kind of a branch of the Bauhaus, and a city hall designed by Richard Meyer, and so on. But this library also is you know, unconventional in the sense that you see the buildings around it, and the library has an architecture that is so very different. Too bad that too much glass was used, and there, without air conditioning, both humans and books would feel you know, rather dwarfed by inconveniences, by you know, troubles with either heat in the summer and cold in the winter. A look at the elevator is otherworldly, is science fiction, is unidentified flying object. So, you know, Gottfried Bohm experimented. He didn't just work, you know, as he often did actually for the churches, but for a library, he worked differently. So the stair is spiraling around the tower with the elevator, and we saw some images of the towering. And there is an amphitheater outside, quite useful now for people to sit there and maybe eat you know, a sandwich or something and listen to someone playing the violin or talk about it, poetry or who knows what. The only objection I would have, if I am allowed to express it, is so much usage with glass. But glass is the, you know, the promised land of architecture. You know, we seem to be unable to imagine an architecture without being seduced by the demagogy of glass. If I am to use the title of an article written by an American architect, editor, writer, theoretician, Andrea Kahn. So this is another interesting work by him from 1974 to 1980, where he tried to combine housing with an existing theater. So it's a hybrid architecture. And, you know, the existing tower, you know, building on the left and his interventions on the right. We see exterior stairs and corridors, and, you know, there are shops at the bottom. So it's very alive, and it's alive because of the hybridity of the functions. And again, unafraid to use color. So here is the theater, and these are the apartments, the housing that he built, and they form some kind of a, you know, coherent organism, architectural organism, but of a hybrid nature. And again, this hybridity, I think, is a positive thing. Now, what is this? Yeah, it's where is it built? I don't see it. I guess he worked again, you know, see, everybody's Bohm. So Gottfried Bohm, and meet with Elizabeth Bohm and Peter Bohm, 1991, 1998. He was already, you know, over 80, if not over 90. This is the building, but I don't know where it is. In Berlin, in Köln, I don't know where it is. A commercial building, but it is still animated and, you know, interesting, enticing, sculptural. Gottfried Bohm. And we see the value of ornamentation, the value of decoration, the value of the capriciousness of the artistic side that, you know, is a positive thing to be part of the architecture. Usually the corner, the intersection of a street, the corner is as a special status, and he emphasizes this special status of the building in the corner by making it more dramatic and more fragmented and more agitated even, because yes, there is is a special place where two sides of two streets meet. So it's a place of conflict in a way, a negotiation. And being a commercial building and being a big city, I don't know which city, unfortunately, and I apologize. I think it participates to the dynamic street life properly. Now, the Hans Otto Theater in Potsdam, we are approaching the end of the presentation, 1995, 2006. So he died in 2021. So, you know, he was 85 years old or something like this at that time. Around that age, Frank Lloyd Wright built the Guggenheim Museum. At this age, Gottfried Bohm built this theater in Potsdam after the reunification of the two Germanies, because Potsdam was part of the democratic East Germany. But now, in 2006, was part of Germany. I'm not so sure about this thin, you know, roof coverings. I don't know. I mean, they do express the lyricism, the exaltation of music, of art, of theater, but somehow, and not just through the form, but also through color, somehow they seem too predictably you know, situated in a dialectical relationship with the glass walls, and you just have the dialectics without some kind of a negotiation between them. It's a little bit, I would say, a little bit questionable, but it's still an interesting work. It's still a work which, especially in this picture, looks inviting. And if that glass was a little bit more you know, creatively used, it would have been even better, I think. Sorry about the Alami. But art in its essence is exaltation. And those red canopies of the roof represent this, you know, the fire of art, the exaltation of art. This is a church. And this is the last work I show, I think, in this rather short presentation. Here we see again the medievalization of the modern, or the medievalization of modernity. Maybe a little bit too explicitly, but it's still an interesting work. Gottfried Bohm, the first architect to receive the Pritzker Prize, and until now, the only one. And this is a book that was published on him. There are many other books, you know, with the theater in Potsdam that we just saw, and the exaltation of the roof that I mentioned. So let's wish, well, no, today was not his birthday, but the day when he died. So thank you for being here today, and let's talk a little bit about this work. Thank you.